now available on e-readers everywhere. From the author of the Simp Trilogy, Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance, Manginas, They Look Like Men But They Act Like Ladies, and The Misadventures of Captain Sailor Holcomb's Stop Simping in the Workplace. Learn what mistakes not to make with women and protect your job with Stop Simping in the Workplace. Available on e-readers everywhere. Back in 1970, President Richard Nixon declared war on drugs. And in this war on drugs, which has been proven by memos that have been released from the Nixon administration, this war on drugs was actually a war on black people. And according to President Nixon, this war on drugs was a two-pronged assault to destroy the black community. The first part of this assault was to bring drugs into the black community. And part of that assault in that first phase was to get African Americans to go out here and sell this poison to their own people. And the way they did that was by preventing African American men from having equal opportunity and equal access to the job market. Now, many African Americans thought they were going to get equal opportunity and equal access at the job market with programs like affirmative action, but most of those opportunities pretty much went to white women and to black women. And by hiring black women, they, one, emasculated the black man, and two, pretty much met their affirmative action quota by hiring a woman and a minority in one fell swoop. And this led to many of these black men believing the false idea that they had to go out here and sell these illegal drugs for fast profit. And these guys thought they were selling these illegal drugs and they were going to help their community by selling these drugs, similar to the way that these mobsters, Italian mobsters, went out here. But what happened was many of these African American men wound up destroying their communities, and then they wound up going to prison. So that was one way the war on drugs pretty much destroyed many black lives. Now, the second way this war on drugs destroyed black lives was that many people, seeing these hippies out here, white hippies, and wanting to emulate them, decided they wanted to go out here and take these illegal drugs. And they took these illegal drugs and they became addicted to illegal drugs. And as these black people took these illegal drugs, it pretty much led to their lives being destroyed. And that was all another part of Richard Nixon's war on drugs, because it was a war meant to destroy black people and the lives of black people and to destroy the black community. Now, that war pretty much escalated with the rise of the crack epidemic. And in that phase of the war, we saw the black community literally in a civil war where black people were pretty much killing each other like roaches in a roach motel. They were pretty much shooting at each other in these drug wars, and that was all part of the plan of the war on drugs. And then we had these federal mandatory minimums and federal laws that were passed in things like Bill Clinton's crime bill, and that was all meant to imprison black people and put them in jail, along with other state laws such as the Rockefeller drug laws. And all these laws were meant to pretty much destroy the black community and strip it of its strongest resource, which is black male leadership. And it was also meant to pretty much destroy the black family, because without the black man there, the whole family pretty much fell apart and became dependent on the welfare state. And that was all done as a part of this so-called war on drugs, a war which the United States pretty much lost. And the reason why I say the United States lost is because I was watching a 60 Minutes report which pretty much confirmed it, because according to that report on the war on drugs, drug use in the United States has gotten higher over the last 40 years than it did in 1970. Now, back in before Richard Nixon's war on drugs, what happened was illegal drugs were pretty much a small market, and they were very, very much underground. Only a handful of people sold illegal drugs. More people sold numbers before 1970 than they sold illegal drugs. And the dope game was a small game. But in today, the drug use has pretty much exploded exponentially to the point where we have more addicts today than we did in 1970. And these days, a lot of these addicts aren't black people. In fact, most of them are white people. And now that we have a larger white population addicted to drugs, now we have something called an opioid crisis being presented in the media because so many white people are addicted to opioids such as Oxycontin, oxycodone, and graduating to heroin use that we have more white people on drugs than people of color. So, this whole war on drugs that Richard Nixon wanted to wage on black people has completely backfired. And in fact, America has lost the war on drugs because now white America is stuck in a pattern of addiction that it had set up for black America. Basically, karma has come to white America under this war on drugs. We have more white people addicted to opioids such as Oxycontin, oxycodone, and heroin than we have black people addicted to crack cocaine these days. And now these white people are scrambling around trying to find a solution to the drug crisis they pretty much wanted to inflict on the black community. Now it's a crisis in their eyes. And this is the word that they want to use regarding all of these heroin addicts and all these Oxycontin and oxycodone addicts is that it's a crisis. For black people, it was a war, but for white people, it's a crisis. And it's a crisis because now the war on drugs that you use to destroy black people is now destroying white people. So now it's a time to pretty much call it a crisis. When in actuality, you would think you would want to declare war on white people who are selling drugs to other white people because this is destroying your community. And you would think you would want to declare war on those doctors, those pharmacists, and those healthcare facilities which are giving out bootleg prescriptions for oxycodone, oxycontin, and those scraggly white guys who are out here pushing heroin. But no, no one wants to declare war on white people because that would pretty much prove to the world that the war on drugs was pretty much a white supremacist, racist agenda designed to destroy black people. And it would prove how hypocritical many of these white Americans are regarding this so-called war on drugs because to declare war on another white person who is pretty much selling poison to his own people, that would pretty much prove to the world that that whole war on drugs argument that many had back in the 1980s was a bunch of utter crap because they wanted to declare war when the drugs were in the ghetto and there were strung out black addicts, but now it's an opioid crisis and you want to talk about rehabilitation, you want to talk about dealing with the issue, you want to try to deal with the problem by going and putting people in hospitals, but black people, you want to put them in jail. And that, again, would pretty much prove the hypocrisy they would have if they were to declare war on white people. Because to declare war on white people would mean declaring war on themselves, and even worse, telling on themselves about their war on drugs and how it was actually a war on black people. Now, I wonder if Melania Trump is going to come out and tell all these white people on heroin and Oxycontin and oxycodone to say no to drugs. And I wonder if any of these white people out here are going to have campaigns talking about just say no. Because that's what they told us black people to do when there was a crack epidemic, pretty much where black people were killing black people, not just for the addiction, not because they were addicted to crack, but because they were addicted to the money. And they were addicted to the power and the influence that they had as drug dealers in the streets of these places like the South Bronx. And I wonder if they will just tell white people to say no if they were to go out here and steal the stuff out of their home. Will they tell them to say no to drugs? I mean, I listened to the whole rhetoric behind this so-called opioid crisis, and again, it shows me the hypocrisy that Americans have about all of this drug use. They pretty much have one standard for black people, but they have another for white people. And even worse, they don't want to admit that karma has come to America because, just as Charles Stanley said in one of his sermons, you will reap what you sow, greater than you sow, later than you sow. This is what has come to America. America has reaped what it sowed, greater than it sowed, later than it sowed, with this drug war. And the bitter harvest that has come to white America is known as the opioid crisis. This opioid crisis is manifested in the 40 or 50 years after this war on drugs, and now white people are having to deal with the drugs that they planted in the black community. Now those seeds are coming back to be harvested bitterly in the white community. And white people now know all the suffering and pain that black people went through in the 1980s in 2017. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam, Little Girl Lost. The devilish diva helps a lost little girl find her way home in this devilishly funny E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam, Little Girl Lost in paperback and e-readers today.